So, thinking about what's your client's name, Brian?
Yeah. Yeah.
What he wants, like what are some of the requirements that he's got?
Okay. And right now, a lot of the requirements are basically kind of left into our own hands.
Okay.
He doesn't really have any size requirements. I think he just wants kind of ease of navigation. But I think.
But what is it that we're building? Is it just like a what kind of activities is he going to do? Is he going to do document storage, collaboration?
Both.
Does he want content, like a static site out there? Like, you visit, http://brian.com and you come to this SharePoint site?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So he wants a static, content-driven site, right? And he also wants collaboration. What kind of tools does he use? Does he use Office?
Yes.
What version of Office does he use?
Not sure. maybe 2003.
Okay. We know that is Office 12. That's Office 2003. Okay. IE 6, 7. Do you know? What version of Internet Explorer? Firefox?
Not sure. I
Okay.
want to say IE, but
Okay. IE 6/7. Okay. What types of storage or documents is he going to be doing? Like, does he just need a place? How many people are there, I guess?
well, I guess it's going to be quite a few. There's
Okay.
going to be employees. There's going to be people from municipalities, other engineers, peers of that kind.
So how many people on his network are going to need to be accessing the, how many, in other words, local people are going to need to be accessing the portal, uploading documents, downloading documents, doing versioning? How many people do you think that's going to be? Just a round figure.
How many people at one time?
Not
Or
necessarily
just-
one time, we'll get to that, that's important, but just in general, how many people are going to need to log on and get to the portal and say, yep, there's my documents? Take a
so
wild
it's-
guess.
Yeah, I don't
Less
know.
than 100?
Maybe for now, yeah.
Okay.
Maybe by next year it might be 300 or 400.
Okay.
And the nature of this business really is just kind of sitting and waiting, and all of a sudden, boom, just
And
a
these
lot
are
of
people
work.
at his office, right?
They'll be from somewhere else.
Okay, so do they work for him, or do they, like for example, does he have like Active Directory in place, like a domain?
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Do you know what version he's got? Is he running Windows 2000, Windows 2003?
Most likely 3.
Okay. So the people that are going to be accessing SharePoint, are they going to have accounts in his Active Directory?
That's the idea.
Okay. But they're just not going to be physically there.
Not physically there, no.
Okay. So do they VPN in?
Yeah, he's trying not. He wants to get away from using VPNs.
Okay.
Yeah.
So.
But his old system, yeah, that's how it worked.
Okay. So currently, these people do VPN in, and they have accounts, and they have domain accounts.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Is there anybody that accesses, and we think that there's, let's say, for the sake of argument, it's going to be 200 people, right? 200 of those that are going to be doing heavy collaboration. So, as far as, I guess the other folks that are going to need to be accessing that don't, is there anybody that will not have an account here that will need to access the portal and do stuff?
I'm not positive.
Okay.
Yeah.
So so let's put a question mark by anything we're not positive about. We're not positive about this number. We're not positive about his domain structure. We're not positive about his Office version, and really we're not positive about this stuff. So this is all the stuff. This is the great stuff for you because this is stuff you'll flush out when you have your initial conversation with it.
Mm-hmm.
So the other thing we're going to need to find out is, are there any external users, folks that need access to the portal but that don't live as or part of his environment or his network? Okay. Anything else? Anybody else that needs to access the portal or?
Let's see, employees, external users. Yeah, I mean, I guess under external users would be,
Partners, right?
other engineers.
So we would call them independent consultants or engineers?
Consultants, yeah, anybody like that.
Now, will they need access to do collaboration as well? Or will they just need to be able to read stuff and pull stuff down? Is he going to use this as like a delivery mechanism?
I would assume that for some of those, it's going to be a delivery mechanism. For employees, it would be something that, let's say I'm working for him and doing something, I would need to take certain AutoCAD files and actually work with them and change them and then send them back up.
Okay. Okay, so we have AutoCAD file collab.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so that's pretty much the user population. Do you know how many of those external users that there might be? Like less than 100, more than?
Let's say less than 100 for now.
Okay.
for this year.
Less than 100. I'll put a question mark by that.
Yeah, I could be wrong about that.
Okay. So that's great. This is all stuff. This is a very guided. Based on these question marks, if you hit all these things, this is a very guided conversation you'll have.
Okay.
Any other? So we've got static content site collaboration. We're assuming he's using Outlook and Office and all those things, so he'll be able to interact with them in what we call full client interaction. Office 12, you'll often hear in terms of SharePoint as client, since this is really considered an Office server product. So any other thing you can think of, like how else? Is there any other ways that he wants to use it? Like if you look at all the features of the product, is he ever going to need to do reporting, Excel services? How does he want his search experience to be?
Yeah.
So I'm assuming he's going to want to search, and he's going to say, I just want it to work. And that's where you're going to say, okay, well, how do you want it to work? Do you want everything searchable? Do you want to be able to search metadata about your AutoCAD files? He'll be like, sure, that would be great. And then that'll drive the concept, the logical concept of how you want things organized and arranged.
Okay.
What's called taxonomy. So on the logical side, you've got information architecture. And you've also got, let's do that down here, is taxonomy. So taxonomy is basically a way for you to organize things so that they're easy to find. You group things into category, you attach tags to items. Think of it in terms of music, right? There's an album, there's an artist, there's the producer, the songwriter. All that stuff's in that ID3 tag on the music file, so you can, in Windows Media Player, you can sort and filter and find things and search, right? So that's taxonomy. It's all in categories. There's a genre attached to music, right? Electronica or rock or whatever. So it's basically taking all those elements and attaching them to your documents, so that if you search and filter, just like in Windows Media Player and SharePoint, you can find these items. So give me all AutoCAD files that were created between 2003 and 2006 that are for the specific client, and you can be able to search and find that stuff. Okay. But you have to create those parameters, just like you create that
right.
Whoever does the music stuff creates that stuff for you. Information architecture is at a larger level. Where are these sites going to live? Like, how are we going to arrange the sites? Okay, so oftentimes before you design the physical architecture, I like to design the logical architecture because it has no concept of boxes and servers and things like that. So usually the first thing I start with is what kind of components are we going to have as part of the solution? So we know that in information architecture, there's a web application, right? I'll draw the hierarchy. That's the top level. Everything sits inside a web app. A web app has authentication providers, which basically tell it, should I just let everybody in the world see my stuff, or should I just authenticate people, make sure that only certain people can access certain things? A web application can have multiple zones. Zones mean that you can have multiple authentication providers. I'll explain that in a second. You can also have site collections, and this is really more of a SharePoint object. Site collections is just that collection of websites, right? And then you can have sites within those websites, or site collections rather. The sites can be of any type or template. And the type or template determines how they look and feel and what they do. So, have you read about like the site templates and collaboration? About a team site.
Some of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Portal publishing site. We're probably for most of these, we're talking about a team site for here,
Mm-hmm.
and we're talking about a publishing portal here.
Okay.
Yeah. So very different sites, right? So they do very different things. They have very different interactions with the database and so forth. So from an information architecture point of view, we know that he has Active Directory, right? We also know that he wants to do away with VPNs. So so one of the questions you're going to ask him is, once you do away with your VPN, how do you envision people getting access? Well, he's going to put SharePoint on the web and everyone will get access. So that means that everybody in the employees group will be able to authenticate through NTLM, what we call NTLM Challenge Response Authentication. You ever go to like one of those websites and that gray box pops up and it says enter your username and password and it looks like a Windows box? That's what they're going to see on the web, his employees. They put their username and password in and then they get authenticated through. So in terms of a web application, that we've walked through some of the exercises before about how to create a web app and how to create a site. Have you done that yet?
Yep.
Okay. So really now what we want to decide is we know that we have at least 2 sites, right? We have a collaboration team site and a static content site. So the question is how we want to actually arrange that kind of thing. So I'll tell you, take Zach something here for now. I'll tell you how I usually do it, and you can tell me whether or not this works for him. So we'll have a couple of web apps, and we'll talk about those in terms of DNS names, right? The network names that you use to get to those things. We'll say, what's this company name?
Integrated engineering.
I'll call it IE, right? So we'll have teams.ie.com, right? And for now, if you type in teams.ie.com on the regular internet, it's not going to go anywhere, I'm assuming. Maybe unless somebody owns this, but for the sake of argument, say nobody does. That means that he's going to have a DNS entry in his network that says teams.ie.com goes to my SharePoint server, right? So if you're outside the network, you have no idea. If you're inside his network, it knows where to go. When you type that into your browser. So inside this web app, we'll have a team site. Well, a site collection. And we'll have a team site. Okay, so now the next question is, a team site gives you a document library, it gives you lists and all that stuff, you see it, right? All the 1 to 200 employees, are they going to be using the same team site? Are there going to be sub-sites? Is he going to allow people to create sites randomly? What roles are those people going to be in, you know? So there's basically 2 roles, right? There's contributor, and then there's owner. An owner can change the structure of the site, create sites. A contributor can change objects in the site, meaning they can check in and check out documents, they can change documents. Probably what most of these guys are going to be. What I don't think that he wants is any of his employees, or most of his employees, being able to create and change and delete elements of the information architecture, like sites, create subsites, because what happens then is you get this big cloud full of crap that people just create and never use again, or they delete and don't use. So he's probably going to want to have some person that all these employees call, or they fill out a request, maybe even in SharePoint, and it goes to them and says, hey, I need to create a new team site. And that person goes, oh, wait a minute, there's another site I created yesterday for someone in your group. You don't need a new site, you just need to use this site. They're like, okay, well, I need a place to store my documents. And then that person will go, okay, you know what, I'll tell you what, I'll create you a document library on that team site and you can use that. How's that? That's perfect. So now if you see what happened there, he stopped this creep of just all this junk, you know, just taking over the world. So he's probably going to want to have particular people in there, right? So the idea here is you can have parallel team sites. So this could be /sites/site A /sites/site B. So what happened is if somebody works on team A, they need to get there, they'll go teams.ie.com/sites/site A. http:// Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So now they have their peer sites. So here you would say, I assume he's got multiple departments or groupings of people. So maybe for each logical, so the question is, how do you want to logically group these people? Let's type these questions, or write these questions. Who can do what? And we'll put a sub-bullet: contributor, reader, owner. And then is, how are and we'll say separate team sites, vertical, or combination. So that means is everybody just gets a site in the root. And now that may seem cool, it's like you're just making a bunch of folders, but the problem is you're going to wind up with this huge, flat, hard to manage site collection without some hierarchy, which may be okay, but the problem is if somebody has rights in here, you now have to assign rights here and here and here and here. There's no cascading of rights down the site structure. If I were to create a subsite called, sites/site B/project 1. Now everybody in here that works on team B can have project 1 through N, right? Because it's just subsite. It's a team site also, but it's nested within another team site, nested in the site collection, nested within the web application. So now everybody that's in site B, project B, or team B can now work on project 1 because this site inherits all the settings from the parent. Now alternatively, you might say, okay, I don't want that to happen. And you can say, no problem, I can make this have unique permissions, but it makes sense in terms of where it lives. So it's all about grouping things that match. So he might say, how are employees organized, or how do they work? You might say every team, HR, accounting, sales, has their own team site, and within that team site they might have separate sites for all the projects they work on. It's a much better approach than having project 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, all the way down here. So the idea is to put everything in buckets, right? And then have only that stuff that's there live in the bucket that they need.
Okay. Yeah.
Because it's easier to manage this approach than it is to manage this approach, because if you make a change here to security, that means you got to make a change everywhere else. Here you just make a change once and it just cascades, if you wanted to, and if that makes sense. And that's really what you're going to ask him in terms of how you're going to get organized. So that takes care of the teams, right? So each one of these has document libraries, they have web parts, and people can have a high degree of flexibility about what they do over those things. So then you have another web app, because we have to meet this requirement. So we'll have www.ie.com. So in this instance, if you type this in to the web, I assume this goes to his homepage, right? He's got a homepage right now?
Yeah, he has a domain, but I guess...
Okay, there might not be anything there yet.
Right.
Okay, so you type it in, it goes to the domain hoster page, future site of ie.com or whatever. So what he wants to do is put something in place there. So if you type this in the real world, it'll go to his site.
Yep.
Right now it goes to his ISP. Eventually he'll register with his ISP where his public IP addresses are, and they'll just start sending traffic to those public IP addresses. And that eventually will come through all of his network infrastructure and just map right to this web application. So when you type this in internally and externally, it'll come here. So here we've got site collection.
So that's more or less like a welcome page in a
Yep.
way, or...
Yep, this will be the publishing portal.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see, this will be a Teams site template. This will be a publishing portal. So in here will be a couple of sites. When you set up a publishing portal, you get a home page, home site, you get a news, you get a search center, you get a pages, I can't remember, there's something else in here too. You get those out of the box. You can add, remove, or delete any of those. You can control navigation on any of those through the web. You can do publication content. So let's say that he wants to make a change to the homepage, or somebody in his organization wants to make a change to make a press release. What they'll do is they'll come to the news site, say, I need to make a news article, and they'll choose from the news template on the web. I can show you this too. And then they'll say, okay, this looks perfect. They type in, hey, this is our new home site. This is our new homepage. It looks great, doesn't it? They'll save that page, and then on the top toolbar, it'll say, okay, this page has been saved as a draft. I'm not going to show it. It won't show it until you approve. So then it goes through an approval lifecycle, right? Because it's content development. And eventually he'll get an email and says, hey, there's new content awaiting your approval. He'll go there and be like, okay, I really don't like the way that you made this font. Can you change this font? Or I think our standard font should be Arial 12. They'll go back, change it, republish it, approve, and he'll say, yep, it's approved, published, and then boom, it shows up in the real world.
Okay.
So when I saw you in your chat logs with him, that's content management, automated content management.
Okay.
No tools needed to write HTML. There's built-in browser tools that allow you to do that. So you don't need to use Hotdog or Front Page or any of those things. You can, but you don't need to. So that's pretty much all done there. Then you have a search center which can go across all the searching. So this is their public site. Now the other question is, does he need an intranet site? I can't imagine that he would, because it sounds like kind of a smallish company. I mean, this is the exact same structure you would set up for an intranet site. The intranet site might index, in terms of search, all your team sites. So if I go to MSW, which is our internal intranet site, I can search across all of our internal all Microsoft documents. If you go to Microsoft.com, which also runs at SharePoint, if you put in my name, you won't find anything that I've done privately inside the company. So 2 different search scopes, right?
Oh, I see.
So this will be totally isolated, because you don't want people from the real world, and this is the internet, right, in this cloud here, to see anything that's done in here. This is all your managed properties to be completely segregated and separated securely and so forth. So here, let's talk about authentication. This will just be what's called Windows Integrated, which means if you're on the network, you've logged into the domain, you don't really even need to put any credentials in. It automatically knows who you are, it lets you in. If you're outside the network and you type this into your browser, it'll send you there. His network architecture, which sits kind of like up here, will route you down, and it'll say, who are you? And it says you're not on the domain. It'll prompt you for credentials, you'll put in your credentials, then it'll let you in, right? Okay, so this is totally separate. Right there. So that's pretty much how I would design it. This is an example. So if you're having your conversation with him and is he kind of like a technical guy? Like, would he be interested in this level of detail?
I think to an extent. Yeah.
Okay, so this might be a good point in which you might not have to explain authorization providers, zones, and site collections. That's really the talent. Being a talented consultant is all about feeling out your audience and not telling them things that they don't seem to care about. And if you don't know, just ask them, like, do you care about this stuff, or
Right.
And a lot of times they'll say, no, not really.
Right.
And then you're like, okay, so here's what I'm thinking. And then you come back and you type in teams.ie.com, you go to team site, and this stuff they should be able to understand. But it's important to define that up front. So to me, that's the way I would arrange a logical information architecture in terms of number of sites and stuff. And here you have a lot of work to do to find out exactly how he wants things to be. It's primarily going to be dependent on these questions being answered. I made this up because this is the way a lot of people do theirs. But a lot of times, just you gather that information and go back and think about how you would recommend to arrange this structure. So, and hopefully there'll be buckets and vertically deep buckets. So that's easy. That's probably the more complex one. This is easy. So then we have questions in terms of taxonomy, right? So taxonomy is attaching. If you think about this is what you want to have highly instrumented with metadata. Think of this as like your songs repository, your database. Right? You want to have pack as much metadata in there as possible. So have you read about content types?
Start talking about it, because I think I have started reading about that.
So if I've got a Word document.
Actually, the more metadata, the more refined I can make a search. Basically, is
Yep. The more relevant that document becomes.
Yeah.
Yep. So
Okay.
I've got a Word document. It's an invoice, right? I upload it to SharePoint, and I say, oh man, I can't remember what I did with that Word document. I need to find all that Word document. So I got search bar. I'll just type in the search. So as we know, SharePoint can look inside Word documents and index those things based on the Word document. So you're like, oh, I typed in 10 phrases into this Word document. I know. So you search on those 10 phrases, it brings up like 50 documents. And you're like, well, I know I wrote it. So I'm going to search by all documents by me, and then nothing comes up. The reason is because this Word document just has been indexed with the .docx extension, and the first 64 lines of text have been indexed. Right? That's all the indexer does. So that document is not very searchable, because we know that it's got a whole bunch of words in it, but nobody can really find it, because they don't know if it's a specific type. There may or may not be tags attached to it. So the thing to do is to attach this cloud of metadata. So if it's a sales invoice, we want to make it of the type sales invoice. We're going to say, hey, this is a sales invoice. We also want to say it's for client X. We also want to say that Eric Charran wrote it, and we also want to maybe say it was good. It's for the date of 1/2007. So that way, if I go to the search bar, I type in all that stuff, and this document now becomes very relevant and findable. Not only is it searchable, but if you go to the document library itself, you can actually see in the doc lib. You've seen the document library, right? You have your new bar, your new button here, and so forth. In the document library, you have all these items in here, right? So you've got the Word document icon, and then across here will be sales invoice, document type. Then we'll have client, who's the client. Then we'll have author, and then all this information will be filled in here. So when you go, not only will you be able to search on it, you'll be able to go to this document library and have it configured with all the information from that document that's relevant. Plus, when you open this document up, in Word 2007, you know how when you open up a Word document, you seen 2007, you got the little Office Pearl there.
Yeah.
You got the ribbon up here, right? Then you got, what's yours here? X, those buttons up there. And then you've got, all the text down here, right? Your scroll bars over here, right? What pops up when you open up a document from a SharePoint library is all of that information.
Does that all that information, that metadata, that's automatic? It automatically makes those, or that's not something I have to?
You have to set this up.
Okay.
You have to set up these fields, and then everybody puts that stuff in. You can mandate that they be there. So whenever somebody opens this document up or creates a new version of the document, they'll see the text of the document. Then they'll also see this what's called a document information panel pop up. So here they'll have doc type. Then they'll have client. Then they'll have author. And then whatever, date. And all of that comes into Word automatically from the document library. And then the question is, where does this come from? How do we set that up? We know we have to. So that comes from an object called a content type. So content type is basically, it's a name-value pair. Well, it's a name pair. It's just a name. It's a set of fields and just what type of fields they are. So a content type may have, you may have a sales invoice content type. Actually, I'll show you something that might put this in perspective. So in the sales invoice content type, you've got, invoice type, which is actually kind of redundant there since we know it's a sales invoice, but still. Well, actually, let's do this. Let's call it an invoice type, so you can have multiple. This is the invoices document library. So we'll have invoice type. Invoice type. We'll have date, author, what should I say, client. And this is defined at the site collection level, which means that every site in your site collection can use this content type. So now you can see why it's important to have buckets, because content types can't go across site collections. So if I have an invoice here, this is my accounting site collection, I've got multiple invoice types. Someone in my HR department can't easily use my invoice content type. So the more stuff you have inside a site collection, a site, the easier it is. Wait, that's not true. A site here can't use content types in this site collection. This site collection can use everything. We'll get to that. Site content types can't cross site collections without you manually copying and pasting them, in essence, which is bad because if this changes, then you got to go to other site collections to make those same changes.
Okay.
And there are ways to automate that. So now that I've created so the first step is in setting this up is step one is to create the content type. Think about all the types of documents. So the first question you're going to ask your client is, what types of documents are you going to want to capture information about to make them easily identifiable and searchable. So it'll be like, well, I got these AutoCAD drawings. Well, and then you have to talk them through. Well, what types of AutoCAD, is there any common information about those AutoCAD drawings that you want to be able to see when you go to a document library? They'll say, sure, I want to see who they're for, right? What team's working on them. Maybe when they have to be finished by. So you'll say, okay, great, that's my first content type. Take all those things, create a content type, boom. Now you can take that content type and attach it to not only one document library, because that's the next step, is attaching the content type to the document library. Once you attach the content type to the document library reforms itself to what your fields are in the content type. Which also means if you click on a Word document or do a new Word document and you open it up, it's going to have all your fields in there. Pretty cool, huh?
Nice.
So you might have, let's make this more relevant to you, right, to your client's situation.
Like, for instance, some CAD, some AutoCAD files might be from projects that are active, and some projects that are not active anymore. They're already have finished up to this point.
Okay, cool. So let's what should we call it? Like AutoCAD drawings?
You can just say, just CAD drawings, active projects or...
CAD docs, let's call it. Because these are going to apply to documents that are CAD drawings.
Yeah.
So we'll have an active flag, right? I don't know, who it's for? Client?
Yeah, who it's for, maybe a project name, like
Okay.
just an ID just for that project.
Okay, cool.
Let's see what else. I don't know if you would do this, but possibly by a geographic location, state or county or whatever, municipality.
Are these all going to be for municipalities? Are there going to be any exceptions? Okay, so that's good enough to start with.
Yeah.
So you create that content type in the site collection. You do that through central administration in the site settings. Content type sits out there. You create a brand new document library. And you say, okay, any type of document that's created in this document library, it's called CAD drawings, should request this information. So you hit the new button in the document library. These are the rows. Somebody creates a new, what's the AutoCAD document extension?
.dwg.
DWG. Okay, so somebody creates a new DWG document. Oops, not up here. So, before anybody creates anything, you go into the settings on the document library, because right from the start, it's just the document library, right? You go into the settings and say, I want it to have this content type. So, what we can do then is, we'll notice that the fields on the document library matches the content type. So we'll have active as a field, we'll have client, project number, and then state. And then we'll have a field out here for the actual document. So you'll see that's the document, and then somebody creates a new one. PA 1, 2, 3, X and S, and then it's active. So what happens is, you attach the document library, the person says new, they click on new, it opens up in, well, let's say for the sake of argument it's a Word document instead of a CAD document. If it's a Word document, they'll open it up, and all of those fields will show up in there. They type those fields in, type what they want, hit save, it'll go back in and put all that stuff. SharePoint will extract that from the document and fill all this information into the document library. What's going to happen for you guys is, for CAD, you'll probably have to upload it to the document library, and at the time of the upload, it'll ask for all of those fields.
Okay.
Because there is no document information panel in AutoCAD.
AutoCAD, yeah.
Right,
Okay.
that is.
I was wondering how that information will get there. Okay.
So it'll have to be uploaded, but or you can upload it and go back and fill that in manually, but most people are not likely to do that. So you'll probably have to have an upload screen that will do that for them. So this is the next step. So now let's say, you might come in and say, you know what, there is a subsection of documents that need to refer to that of AutoCAD drawings. Not all of them, and maybe 30% of them that might need to have a field called I don't know, municipality code, right, or zip code, maybe. So I don't want all documents to have zip code, just some of them. So you could easily add another field here called zip code and have some of them filled in and some of them not. On the other hand, if he comes back and he says, oh, I need to have this new content, or this content type have maybe 14 more fields for a small subset of documents. Well, now your content type is going to look like this, right? Your document library is going to go all the way out here. So maybe what you do at that point is you have a content type inherit from a parent, and then just have the changed fields in it. So you could have a content type that just has, this is I for inherit, municipality code, zone, supervisor, whoever at the county, looks at it, and n number of fields. So now when you attach this content type to a document library, not only do these fields show up, but these fields as well. Alternatively, if he comes to you and says, you know what, I have a third document type that needs look mostly the same, but it's got to have different fields than this. So then what do? You create another content type that inherits from this content type, and you add your fields in there. So now, if he comes back to you and says, hey, you know what, that active field, I really want it to be a text field instead of a Boolean true or false field. So instead of going, oh, I got to change it across all these content types, you just change it in one place, and these guys just ripple down. Because they don't actually store the definition, they look to here for the definition. Okay. Does that make sense? Or if he says, okay, really quickly, emergency, I need all of the AutoCAD documents to have a field called reviewer. Well, instead of visiting n number of content types, however many you may have created that inherit from this, you just add reviewer to the base content type, and then all these other ones get it.
Okay, yeah.
Which means all other document libraries, this is one of n. You have document library 1, 2, 3, 4, which may inherit from all these other content types. If you want to add a field to all of them, you just put it in here, and boom, it shows up here, 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 here. They're going to be empty, but they'll show up.
At least they'll be there. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So now you don't have to change each content type. You don't have to change all these document libraries manually. They just show up. So this is really going to help in terms of he's going to ask, well, what's the big deal? Why do I even need to care about this stuff? Well, it'll help in terms of what data you capture about each document, what users see when they go to each document, how it's searched and indexed if they need to find documents, and then if there's any additional data you want to start storing about that stuff, it can all be stored right there in the document or with the document. So that's why you should care. So then the next question is, and the way to do it is to just ask them questions and help them come up with the answer. So you don't need to explain to him what a content type is, but just ask him questions about what kind of documents are there, what kind of information do you want to capture. So in your mind, you're thinking this, right? In his mind, he's like, oh yeah, well, you're just pulling information out of him that he already knows, right? So none of this stuff we should really have to explain until we're farther down the road, until you can demonstrate it. But in your mind, like as you're taking notes, you can kind of just start jotting down the content types as you're listening to them. And even if you don't have enough expertise to figure out how to do it, just start jotting down fields. And then once you have that list of fields, just say, which one of these will have, every single document will have? And then which one of these are kind of sometimes fields that you may want to have filled in?
Like what do we need to know about all of these files?
Yep.
I mean, exactly if you're going to search for them.
Yep, so the first thing is, how many types of documents do you have? You've got AutoCAD documents. There's just one type of AutoCAD document, which you want to collect information about. And he might be like, yep, that's it. That's all I need. And you might be like, all right, well, I know better. I know that I'm going to get halfway down the road, you're going to say, you know what, there's going to be a third type. And you'll say, that's okay, because I can manage it through creating inherited content types or changing. So,
yeah.
But most clients, when you're halfway through the project, they're like, oh man, I forgot about this, and there's this, and that's where you really have to manage in terms of scope creep too, because now that you're doing this I would assume you're doing it on like a contract or hourly basis.
Yeah.
You're doing it fixed price. Okay. So you really want to double, triple protect yourself with a statement of work, because fixed price, if it's not time and materials, if he starts adding stuff on, your first instinct is going to be like, oh yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I can do that. And before long, you've invested so many hours in the project that the amount you're getting paid is nowhere near, like you'll be getting paid like $4 an hour if you take a look at the whole what he's given you versus the time you put in. So you have to tightly control scope, And then to protect yourself, just say, if there are any changes from what I documented that you want to do, we're just going to do, we just add it on, Or we'll do, if I spend over half an hour doing something else besides what was originally documented, then I'm going to start charging you an hourly rate.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's and to be honest, if he doesn't agree to that, or there's for some reason that's not doable, don't jeopardize it, because this is going to be great experience for you. So just say, hey, this is my first SharePoint gig. I'm not going to nickel and dime you. I mean, don't tell them that, but in your mind, just start thinking that and say, at the end of this, I'll have a SharePoint gig that I can put on my resume.
Right. Yeah.
So, but usually argue for time and materials, and then if they don't, just say fixed price and say anything outside of that scope that I perceive scope increase, we'll just start doing an hourly basis.
Right.
Because I just got involved in a fixed price war. Microsoft doesn't like to do fixed price engagements. So we ended up losing a good 25% of our profit margin because we went over it. The client just introduced scope, and the engagement manager didn't catch it. So we were all working and doing stuff, and he's like, you guys are actually killing me with my profit, because you guys are billing no matter what. We get taken care of. He holds the bag in terms of profitability on the project. So if I start billing extra, I start taking away from his profit that he gets at the end of the engagement. So that's a fixed price kind of thing. All right, you want to see some of this stuff?
Sure. Oh yeah. Definitely.
All right, so that might help, because we're always talking about this